1986 was wild. Top Gun was in movie theaters, Ferris Bueller was taking a day off, and Lionel Richie's Say You Say Me was topping the charts. If you were into rock, you had Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet, Van Halen's 5150, or Genesis playing on your Walkman. Fashion, that meant neon windbreakers, acid-wash denim, and enough hairspray to fuel a small city. On the baseball side, the Kansas City Royals were fresh off the '85 World Series victory, one of the most debated finishes of the decade. And right in the middle of all that retro magic, Donruss drops their 1986 Donruss set. Let's jump into the 24 most valuable cards in the 1986 Donruss set, based on recent eBay sales. All right, first we want to look at the rookies. In this set, we've got rookies, Hall of Famers, dollar bin, and $5 bin cards. With the rookies, there were 87 total rookies in this set, 44 Hall of Fame cards. And for the dollar bin, we had 21 total cards. Those are ones that Beckett would say had a high book value of at least $1. We know that if you sold these on eBay, almost every card can go for $1, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily worth $1. And then 3 cards in the $5 bin. We'll see if you can figure those out by the end of this video, what were the top 3 cards of this set. If we look at all the data here, and add up the value of each individual card, that gives us a book value of $81 to $220, with an average card being 12 cents to 33 cents. Pack value then would be between $2 and $5. For me, what I actually paid on eBay was about $4 a pack, so I was right in that range, meaning that you can buy these on eBay. If you buy a box on eBay for about $150, you're basically going to get that much value out of it. So this was a pretty good set, a fun one to open up, that's for sure. All right, before we jump into our top 24 cards, I wanted you to see a few outliers. These technically would have been in the top 24, except they didn't have other sales. Like this was for a PSA 10, but they didn't have a PSA 9 or an 8, and I can only assume that's because somebody really liked these players and wanted them in Diamond Kings, and because the pop was probably low on each of these. So they're not included, but that doesn't mean these aren't great cards. The Cecil Cooper, Tony Perez, and Willie McGee, great cards that just missed our cut for the top 24. All right, we're going to start off with Cal Ripken, the Iron Man. Coming into 1986, Ripken was fresh off a monster 85 season where he hit 27 homers, drove in 110 RBIs, and played in all 162 games. That's something he did basically every year. In the 80s, Ripken was much hotter in the hobby than he is today, although he's pretty good, pretty collectible even today. Kids loved him because he hit for power, played shortstop, and never took a day off. I was a big fan of Cal Ripken. His 1986 Donruss isn't necessarily rare, but the high-grade copies draw attention because of those black-chipped borders. It's hard to get a 10. The top sell for this card came in at $53.01, solid for a non-rookie in the junk wax era. You'll see here as we look at the top, and we'll just go through this on his, and then you'll know for the future ones. I'm looking at low book value on Beckett and high book value. So he was between $1.25 and $3. So he was one of the top 25 cards according to Beckett. If we go to Sportsline or Priceline, I can't remember the site that I use, but it aggregates all recent sales, and it said for ungraded you could get $1.82. For PSA 7, 8, and 9 we're under $15 basically, which means if you want this card, buy it. Like a PSA 9 for $15, that's a bargain. And so this would be a great one to add to your collection, add that value. A PSA 10 is worth the cost of grading. So if you feel really strong that you're going to get at least a 9 or a 10, this one might be worth sending in. So that's our Cal Ripken Jr. Up next is one of the most electrifying defenders of the 1980s. That's Ozzy, the Wizard of Oz. Number 23, the Wizard. In 85, Ozzy hit .276, stole 31 bases, won another Gold Glove. He had a bunch over his series or career while helping lead the Cards to the World Series. In the mid 80s, Ozzie was more popular than he is today. That goes without saying. Most of the players were. Kids loved him because it was acrobatic, had an impossible range. You know, doing the backflips on opening day and in the World Series, he was just so fun to watch. One of my all-time favorite players. And his card came in at $54. All right, now off to number 22. In number 22, we have Mike Schmidt with a sale price of $54.99. Of course, Schmidt was one of the best third basemen of all time. In '85, he had 33 home runs and remained one of the most respected hitters in baseball. He wasn't necessarily flashy, but he was super, super consistent. Always been a big fan of Mike Schmidt. Then coming in at number 21, we've got Pete Rose. Pete Rose, while he's had a controversial career, you know, with betting on baseball and everything else, this was an amazing season for him. You'll notice this is his manager card, but it's also a first base card. So this is as he transitioned from playing into managing. He's the all-time hits king in '85. So this season, this commemorated him surpassing Ty Cobb's all-time hits record. So he was the biggest story in baseball for that '85 season. In the '80s, his cards were everywhere. Kids knew him, whether it was this '86 Donruss where you can get 3 different Rose cards. I know in Topps, they had a whole series just for Pete Rose. He was probably the most collectible player of this era. And $59 for this card. We're going to see him again on this countdown. Let's move on to number 20. Here you see we've got a rookie here with Lenny Dykstra coming in at number 20 and selling this card for $59.99, of course, in a PSA 10. Lenny the Nails, or Nails Dykstra, I didn't know that was his nickname. He stole 27 bases in '85, and he was just a really popular rookie. This was a very collectible card then. You got to love his awesome mullet. All right, let's move on to 19. One of my personal favorites. We've got Dennis Eckersley. In '85, he was still a starting pitcher. This was before his relief days. He had 240 innings and struck out 150 in the '85 season. What hobby collectors didn't know at this time that he would transform into one of the most dominant closers of Major League Baseball history. You see here we've got this icon over for Hall of Fame. I didn't point that out on Ripken or Ozzie, but here's our third Hall of Famer in this countdown, and this card sold for $60. All right, coming in at number 18 is George Brett, selling for $64. Another Hall of Famer here. In 1985, he batted .335 to lead the Royals to the championship, which made him kind of super popular at this time. He had a very loyal following. I wasn't a Royals fan, but I was a George Brett fan just because he was awesome. And so there he is at number 18. At number 17, we've got our second Pete Rose card. Here he is of the King of Kings. So instead of just Diamond King, you'll notice this one's a little different. King of Kings, card sold for $69 this last quarter. And again, you know, very sought after. And we should just put a plug in here for Donruss with their Diamond Kings. This was a great idea. When Donruss started back up in the 80s, I believe 81 was their first set, and they did the Diamond Kings, and they were awesome just to have this really awesome artwork. I think it was done by someone named Dick Perez, and he just did a fantastic job. So there's our Pete Rose at number 17. At 16, we've got the Rocket, Roger Clemens, also selling at $69 here. In the '85 season, he had a 2.0 ERA and a 20-9 record, so he was pretty dominant in the '85 season, and of course remained dominant for a long time. Should be in the Hall of Fame. Just a really great player there at number 16. At 15, we have another pitcher with Doc Gooden. He had an even more impressive '85 season with a 1.53 ERA, 24 wins, and the Cy Young Award, and he was only 20 years old. So just a fabulous pitcher. I think this was his second year card. Um, just a huge star at that time. And he fizzled a little bit with time, but really a dominant pitcher there in the 80s. Now we've got at number 14 our third and final Pete Rose card. This is the record breaker card celebrating hit number 4,192. It made baseball history and was, again, just really popular. This card sold in a PSA 10 for $82 in the last quarter. At number 13, this is someone that you might not expect to see on this top 24 countdown, but it is a rookie card, and it's a rookie card for one of my favorite players of all time. I grew up as a Cardinals fan, so of course loved Ozzie Smith, loved Willie McGee. We've already seen both of those in this countdown. But now we have the rookie for Vince Coleman, who is arguably the fastest man in baseball. I know most people consider that to be Rickey Henderson, but Vince Coleman here early in his career, as a rookie, was phenomenal. He stole 110 bases and won Rookie of the Year. Had several hundred stolen base seasons back to back to back there in the 80s, and of course was part of the Cardinals as they made a championship run. So just a phenomenal card and player here for Vince Coleman. Number 12 is someone who, again, was very popular at this time, Hall of Famer Tony Gwynn. His card sold for $89.88. And Mr. Padre led Major League Baseball with a 370 batting average. That just blows my mind. He wasn't flashy, but he was consistent and just a great player there in the 80s. Now coming in at 11, I just mentioned him earlier with Vince Coleman. Another speedster here with Rickey Henderson. Of course, it's his 1980 Topps card that is one of the most collectible cards of the decade for sure, but really of all time. Rickey Henderson was the ultimate leadoff hitter. In 85, he stole 80 bases, scored 146 runs. He was popular then, but he's even more popular now. This is just a great card, and still, I think, undervalued at $90 for a PSA 10. All of his cards have kind of gone up in value this last year as he passed away, and people are thinking about him, but just one of the all-time greats. Coming in now to our top 10, we're going to start off with Ryan Sandberg, selling at $90 here for a PSA 10. In 85, he had 26 home runs, stole 54 bases, won a Gold Glove, and was just one of the most popular stars in baseball. His rookie was 83, so this is his third year card. Just a phenomenal player there at number 10. Number 9 is another really popular player of that era that also didn't make it into the Hall, but a lot of people think that he should have. Don Mattingly comes in at number 9 with 107.50. Donnie Baseball, he had a great 85 season. He batted .324, 35 home runs, got the MVP. He was just really huge in the hobby then, bigger than, of course, than he is now, but a great card there at number 9. At number 8, we have another rookie here with Andres Galarraga, $109 for this card. The Big Cat. So Galarraga had a great rookie season, but really at that time no one knew how great he would become. He really stepped up and had a fantastic career. So that's a good one at number 8. Number 7, Hall of Famer Kirby Puckett. And this maybe shouldn't be on the list. You'll notice that here on my listing that it's listed as a Leaf card, but it said Donruss here, and Donruss Leaf, of course, are the same company, but I tried to stick to just kind of the standard. We're not doing any specialty cards or traded or anything like that. So maybe I made a mistake here. I don't really know what I'm doing because I was just a kid. I was 7 years old when this set came out. I just loved the stars. So Kirby Puckett in 85, he bat 288, stole 21 bases, great defender, and just was really popular. A few years later, he got his series championship, and this card went for $110. Now, number 6, and we're going to have a few rookies coming up here. We've got Paul O'Neill, and I'll be honest, I have no idea who Paul O'Neill is. Rookie, and his card sold for $130. He must have had a great career, but as a rookie, didn't know who he was. It took a long time to catch on, and I don't know much about him. Didn't see any stats for his early career. I should have looked up everything for him. I'd imagine he was a good player, but I just don't know much. So moving on. We've got another rookie here with Cecil Fielder. He was just a young power bat trying to find his footing before he went to Japan and then returned to Major League Baseball. So a little bit of a different story, comeback story. And this, of course, early in his career, again, similar to our last card, I didn't know that he would become one of the all-time greats. Didn't make the Hall, but that doesn't mean he didn't have an outstanding career. So this card went for $149.99, and that's awesome. Now, this next one is the surprise of the set. At number 4, we've got Bobby Grich. Not a rookie, not a Hall of Famer. I did look up his stats, and he had a pretty solid career. But why the huge value? It comes down to, in this case, pop. This is just a really rare card. In the 86 set, because the centering was hard to find, because there were a lot of chipped edges, it was hard to get a PSA 10, but in the sheet, this was on the edge. And so this saw a little bit more wear and tear than other cards. It was harder to get centered just right. And so the pop on this card is really low. So the reason somebody paid $150 for this in a PSA 10, I almost can guarantee you they were set chasing. They wanted to have the whole set in a PSA 10. I'm guessing why they picked this one up. But that doesn't mean that he wasn't a great player. In 85, Grich had 30 home runs. He made the All-Star team. He might have been one of the most underrated players of his time, as evidenced by the fact that, like, I had no clue who he was. So there you go. That's number 4, our big surprise. These last 3 are the 3 that probably you expected to see on this countdown. What are your guesses? Who do you think is number 1? I think that probably you're not going to be very surprised. Number 3 is, one, in my opinion, greatest pitcher of all time, Nolan Ryan. Just fabulous. In 85, he struck out 209 batters. He was 38 at that time, so he's still overpowering. Of course, he went on to pitch for like another decade. He was just incredible. He was super collectible then, but he is even more collectible now. Anytime you can get a Nolan Ryan card, that's a good pickup. And this PSA 10 sold for a whopping $449. You see that the high book in Beckett, so as an ungraded, just raw card, $4. And really, most of his sales, the 449 was a lot higher than the average. The average for PSA 10 was just 227. So I don't know why that got bid up for this particular one, but it did. All right, coming in at number 2 is Fred the Crime Dog McGriff. In 1985, as a rookie, he had 20 home runs, and that was showing what was to come for him. One of the most respected players of the 80s, and just a solid career all around, ended up making it to the Hall of Fame. This is the only player in this set with a rookie card that also made it to the Hall of Fame. So we had a bunch of rookies, a bunch of Hall of Famers, but Fred McGriff was the only one in 86 that was a Hall of Famer, that this was his rookie card. You see that it sold for a huge amount, $511, and the average on him was $432, so quite a bit higher than the Nolan Ryan. The book value here from Beckett was between $10 and $25, so this is what we would consider a chase card. You hit this when you open up a pack of 86 Donruss, and it makes it all worth it, because you're not going to make your money back on most of the other cards, but this is like a grand slam if you can open this one up. So really good deal. The final card, the face of the 1980s baseball hype, the face of collecting cards in the 80s, largely responsible with Ken Griffey Jr. for the junk wax era. He made it all popular, and that is Jose Canseco. In '85, as a rookie, he had 36 home runs in the minors, and so he had a ton of buzz coming up into the majors. Had a great rookie season, great sophomore season. He was hugely popular in the '80s. Him and McGuire, they just, we had those two with the A's, and then Bonds and Bonilla with the Pirates, and it was just one of the best duos in baseball. You see that the sale price here for a PSA 10 was $611.27. The average price for a PSA 10 was over $500, so clearly the best card of the series. And similar to the McGriff card, you're going to get a low and a high book here in Beckett from $12 to $30. So this is, if you land either a McGriff or a Canseco in this opening packs, you did it. You win. I can't wait. I'm gonna next year open up a whole box of 86 Donruss, and I've never pulled a Canseco or a McGriff, so that's my hope, is that I can pull something up as I open that in 2026. Well, that wraps up the most valuable cards from the 86 Donruss set based on real 2025 eBay sales. Let me know your memories of these cards in the comments. I'd love to know what stories you have that kept this era alive. And of course, if you'll hit the subscribe and like buttons, I appreciate that, so that another collector who remembers what it feels like to rip these packs in the day can be exposed to these videos. Let's keep the memories alive, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.